You're recording now.
Hello. Our group had the Boys Don't Cry film made in 1999. Okay, the story is the real life story of Brandon Tina, a transgender man in rural Nebraska. He relocates to start a fresh life and to be open with his identity. The friends he made find out about his identity, and some of them do not react well, and he is met with violence and hate for his identity. When going to the law enforcement about this, he is met with the law enforcement being dismissive and also insensitive. And then lastly, Brandon gets murdered by former friends.
I'm going to talk about the ethical issue and how it's presented in this film. So, the main ethical issue in this film is the failure of society and institutions, especially law enforcement, to recognize Brandon's humanity and protect his rights. Rather than being treated as an individual deserving of dignity and safety, Brandon is met with prejudice, neglect, and ultimately violence, revealing deep ethical failures in how marginalized people are treated. In academic literature, the film is analyzed through the lens of queer theory and feminist theory. Scholars frame Brandon's experience not as an isolated tragedy, but as a result of systemic transphobia, rigid gender norms, and heteronormative culture. The strict gender binary enforced by society is identified as a key factor behind the violence he faced. Academics also highlight the repeated failures of authority figures such as law enforcement and the justice system as examples of institutional neglect and complicity. Additionally, the film is studied for its impact on public conversation as it brought transgender issues into mainstream awareness and challenged audiences to confront uncomfortable truths about discrimination, violence, and social responsibility. Now, moving on to the next part.
Today I'm going to talk about the critical analysis thesis slash position. Um, in The Boys Don't Cry, we reveal the destructive forces of heteronormativity and patriarchal power by highlighting Brandon Tina's transgender identity. Through this, it illustrates the prejudice, toxic masculinity, and social silence, how they intersect to create tragedy. Serving both a memorial and a social critique, the film compels audiences to confront the structures that marginalize and endanger individuals who challenge traditional gender norms. The film marked a significant breakthrough in its depiction of Brandon as a trans man striving for love and acceptance within a hostile setting at a time when transgender representation was scarce. Pierce's narrative emphasized Brandon's humanity rather than reducing his identity to something per peripheral. Sorry, guys.
So the last slide is argument for conclusion. My argument is that Boys Don't Cry clearly shows why denying someone's identity is a serious moral wrong, and the film uses Brandon's story to demonstrate the consequences of the denial. The conclusion I'm defending is that disrespecting a person's identity isn't just socially harmful, it creates real moral harm that can escalate into violence. The first part of my argument is the violation of autonomy. Brandon's right to self-definition is repeatedly taken from him, and morally, a person's identity is a part of their basic dignity. When characters refuse to recognize that, they undermine his autonomy. Second, the film illustrates how social prejudice transforms into escalating harm. What begins as mocking or disbelief quickly turns into harassment, then assault, and eventually murder. The movie makes it clear that identity denial is not neutral, it's dangerous. Finally, moral responsibility requires respect and compassion. When this responsibility is ignored, as we see in the film, the consequences fall on the most vulnerable. The film gives us a clear point of view. Respecting someone's identity is not optional, it's a moral duty. And these are the citations from the film, and that was our presentation.